Okay, this is a prelude to the video that we did last night, which was January 27th on the field. There's not a lot of fields I can see right now in Israel. The field that I've been following here very close to the house. First of all, there's some things that need to be clarified. I had a document sent to me that listed all these diseases that can happen to barley, and that the first fruits had to be free from disease and basically not harmful. Okay, so to address that, I was not attempting to harvest anything that would resemble a first fruits quantity, or to harvest anything that I would refer to as a first fruits from that field. What I'm attempting to do is just to show you what happens to barley when it's harvested at a certain stage, how quickly the liquid will evaporate, the moisture will evaporate out of that barley once it's been disconnected from the root. And that really is the key word, is from the root. The stem, the stalk, does not make a big difference. It's when it's disconnected from that root that you see a very significant change in the grain in a very short period of time. So to address the issue of whether or not the barley was diseased, no, I don't believe it was. I mean, I went ahead and separated the grains from the stalk or the stem in order to, so when I roast it in the morning, it's going to be easy. But there's, I mean, I can put a picture in this video. There's no mildew. There's no black mold. When the barley molds, it gets the black fuzzy moldy look on the outside of the grains here. This is actually quite beautiful barley. Some years the barley is very skinny and very small. This is beautiful barley. So it is not, I would not call this barley unhealthy at all, but it doesn't matter. There's no temple, and I'm not taking a first fruits. I'm simply going through the motions here to show you how quickly, when barley is harvested in a dough stage, that point after it's no longer slimy, how quickly that will dehydrate and actually go to a flour. That's the first thing. The second thing I want to address is that if this was my field, if I was the farmer, and if I was worried about a first fruits offering, I would not have harvested the barley that I harvested yesterday, because when it stays attached to the roots, it lasts longer. If I had left this barley in the field, it would not be as hard as it is today and as it's going to be tomorrow. Okay, so this is a little bit more than 24 hours since I brought this home. And see if we can take a grain out. Whoops. You see it's breaking apart pretty easy already. So pull this down a little bit. Once you take that, even the color of the grain has changed. There's a little bit of green left, but it's more tan. Once you disconnect the plant from the root, things happen really quickly. As long as the plant is attached to the root, it doesn't necessarily have to do this unless we get a spike in hot temperatures and hot wind. Then it will happen quickly, but that's not our conditions this year. It's raining today, and it's going to rain supposedly Friday and possibly Saturday, and then next week we're going to get a big spike in temperature. But what that's going to do is I just see the hand of the Father. Okay, it needs a little rain now, cool it off, slow it down. It's attached to the root. You know, it's going to progress in teeny increments as long as that's going on, and then give it a puff of heat, which, by the way, they're saying next week we're going into, this is not my words, this is my Mezek HaAvir, my weather nerd group in Israel. They're saying next week, we're going into the seasonal change, a seasonal change, seasonal system change. So anyway, to finish up with this is no moisture. This is, I mean, so medium dough for me, I cut that. Okay, it's dough in there. Hard dough is, you can cut it, but it's just almost, you can't cut it, and it's not very pliable. And then after that, you go to what they call Aviv, which is indivisible by the fingernail. And that's not what I'm looking for. This is more what I'm looking for today, is it's just almost like a cooked grain of rice. That's about what it's like. It's about like a cooked grain of rice without the moisture on the outside. If it's, you don't want a soupy rice, you want a dry rice, it's about like a cooked grain of rice. So if I was the farmer in that field, I'm going to be out there every day now, going up and down those advanced areas, checking that barley, pulling one here and there, looking at the grains. That's what I would be doing, but I wouldn't have cut it yet. But I would have my attention absolutely trained on that field for those areas that are going to ripen first. Okay, so that's the intro into this. Please do understand, I am not and have not, it was not my intention to lead anybody to believe that what I brought home from the field was a first fruits. It's not enough. There is not enough there for first fruits. There will be enough there for first fruits in time for the year to begin next month. If Asher sheep stay out of that field enough to leave me any barley as we approach that wave date, I'll be happy to go back in there and take samples between now and then to show you how the field is progressing in its general condition. Asher sheep may not leave anything, and I am fine with that. I am fine. I have seen enough now in what this will do, and to know that this is the leading edge of what that field is doing. I've seen enough now to know that we absolutely, if Asher sheep was out of there, I could absolutely go in there and cut plenty to have a basically 2 quarts of barley flour on wave sheaf without a problem. Okay, so that's enough of this. Let's go to the Zoom meeting. So I did go back to the field today, and I'm going to tell you that it was really quite shocking what I saw. I was not expecting to see this much change in the field. I'm going to go to the whiteboard here and try to draw you a little picture of the shape of the field so I can talk about the sections of it. Okay, so this line up here would be, there's a gas station sitting up here. Well, I've shown you the gas station in that picture. Over here, there's a traffic circle. Sorry, these are not going to be super round. Okay, and this comes down from where I live, Perea Elite, comes down to the traffic circle, and then this road is going to spin off towards Yavniel. And then there's another road that comes off the traffic circle, and it goes down towards the Kinneret. Well, I'm not going to be able to draw down towards the Kinneret here, and then up to Alamot here. So the shape of the field is like this. Can you mute yourself, please? And it's going to come down straight from this side right here. Okay, so it's kind of don't know what you would call it. It's curved on one side, straight on the top side, and straight on this side. So from about this point here, 1/3 down on the field, From the first day I saw it, this was still just grass stubble, not a lot going on. When you came down into this area, the further south you got on this lot, this is north, this is south, this is east, this is west. The further down you came into this field, the deeper and the thicker the barley got. And it's also slanted. This is the high end, this is the low end. So the only thing that I can imagine is that because our rains were so heavy and so abrupt when they came, that the water basically ran off the high area, and water going downhill accumulates. So this that was below that had more water, and some of that was able to soak in better. But in the beginning, this first 1/3, there just was not a lot going on. On this east facing side, actually it comes over here like this. On this east facing side, this is the roadside, but there are big shrubberies, tall, thick shrubberies that grow on this side between the field and between the road that would block any heat, tall and thick, that would block any heat from artificially heating this field. But on this east facing side, as happens for 2 years now, I've noticed that if there is an east facing position in the field that gets the morning sun, that's where things will mature the most quickly. This east side was advanced from the rest of the field. Today, when I went back, and of course this side was very immature, the west side was very immature. Today, when I went back, there was not one piece of barley that was not in bloom. It either had bloomed or it was completely in bloom. The barley was absolutely white with blooms. This 1/3 down sitter section right here, now Asher's sheep has started eating the middle from this field right here. Okay, so let's stop and talk about Asher's sheep. Asher has been in the area for a lot of years, and he has been in the hospital for about a month, 3 weeks to a month this year, because his big old rams picked him up 2 or 3 times and tossed him through the air, and he has a bad back. So knowing he just got out of the hospital, we had talked about, you and I, Brother Norm, about asking him not to graze his sheep there, but because I know he's so crippled and he's in so much pain, I didn't have the heart to ask him to avoid the area. So Asher's sheep were in there yesterday when I came by. I could see them grazing out the heart of the field, now about halfway down. So I knew when I went by yesterday, okay, I've got to get in there and I've got to see what's going on before I lose some of the mature grains out of there. So I came in there, and there were big patches that had been eaten out and medium patches in between. One of the things that I've learned about the grazing animals is, well, it's not really rocket science. When farmers grow food for animals, silage, they'll cut the grain, they'll cut the feed with an immature grain head at the point of the highest nutrition. And one of the things I was noticing from last year is that these flocks that graze like this have a nose for the grains that are at that peak of having that highest nutrition. And so I was really curious to go over there and see, because remember, I've really been focusing on this side, because the last time I was there, this east facing side was what was more mature. And this side, this point here, to me, I mean, it was not further ahead, but I was expecting to see more action here on the east side, because I know the east side usually pops first. So today I'm over here. Okay, let's see what the sheep have left behind. All right, so here we go. I'm going to make a big mess. This is what I brought home from where the sheep were feeding. And I want you to look at how white the stalks of the barley are already turning. Here's the roots. I just pulled them up, roots and all. But I don't know if you can see there and see in there and see how white the stalks of barley are already turning. I was not expecting that. Look how white the awns are getting on the barley. Can you see the white awns? Okay. So, and I didn't think, again, I'm telling you, I'm thinking, just running around here wearing my short sleeves, I'm thinking it's not that warm. It's not going to have changed that much, but I was wrong. Okay, so we'll look at some of that in a minute. I brought this home because I was going to try to wait 3 days to roast this, and then I realized, no, that would make it Saturday. So I'm going to roast this Saturday morning and then grind it to show you that it's not any problem. It's going to make flour. Even, let me get this out of the way, actually. Do I need this anymore? I don't need this anymore. Let me finish saying that today, again, this west side was the most immature. Okay, there were meat, somewhat grain, in the majority of the heads over here. Some of them were just the little pieces of flesh at the bottom of the husk that was starting, and some of them were thin husks in the grain head. But there were, I would say, possibly in the field, maybe 20% of the grains that I couldn't find anything in the head. And I am talking about zero beet. When that grain starts to flour, what will happen is, open one here.
Becca, I just wanted to say, if you stop the screen share, we can see the grain a lot better on a bigger photo.
All right, good point. Good point. And I'll put me up on, does it help if I put me up on speaker view? It'll make your screen bigger. Okay, so that's 1 grain of barley. And that was blooming, when I would open it, right against the base of opening that grain, I would find just a little, and that's actually too big, just a little piece of grain already forming. Just about that much in the base of all those grain pockets on that head. Okay, and that, let's just talk about the one I just popped right there. That, there's no worm in that. That's dough. That's dough. I can roast that. That's going to make flour. Okay. I know. I mean, it's miraculously early, Randy. I don't know what to tell you. You know, we can talk about the miracle of the year. And that did come out. This was one of those barleys that did come out of the center of that field where the goats had been eating. And I went in and I gathered up a bunch of it before they ate the rest of it. This is the barley that came out of, I mean, look at this barley, how gorgeous it is. Look at how beautiful the barley is in that field. It's just picture beautiful. But this is the barley that came out of that east side of the field. And you can even see, if you look at the tip of the awns, they're going golden. Okay, of course that doesn't speak to the condition of the grains. So let's just grab. I'm just going to willy-nilly reach inside here and grab. Take this one. All right, and we're just going to open one of those. Can you hear them dropping and hitting already? They sound like little rocks hitting. All right. It's not squeezing. Nothing's squeezing out of it. I'm going to cut it. Nothing's squeezing out of it. Okay, that is, if I roll it around in my hands, I would say that's not a hard dough. That's just before medium dough. Just before medium dough. If I roasted that, there's flour in that. In fact, I will be roasting these. What are some of the other differences? The other groups are looking for a more mature barley. But one of the things that I began to look at as I spent time alone in the field, no longer with a team of people searching, was, you know what? Yes, this is a first fruits offering, but this is feeding a family for a year. And in fact, you've got to have barley for the week of unleavened in the coming year up until the day of wave sheaf, because you can't eat the new crop until wave sheaf. So I began to look at this as life-sustaining food in addition to a wave sheaf. And I realized that from my very first year, when I walked through the barley field and they said, oh yeah, it's Aviv, because it was shattering and it was driving itself down into my tennis shoes. I realized that if I tried to put a hand sickle into that barley, I would come up with a few grains maybe left at the bottom of the stalk, and a whole bunch of grains would have fallen out of the top of the stalk to the earth. So how do we get an offering and feed people? Well, actually, the Bible tells us, it calls it green ears. And if you look at green ears, it's literally speaking that the color of the grain heads are still maintaining a green color. But when you go to Leviticus, then Leviticus tells you it has to make a flour. So that's our criteria. It's still got to be somewhat green, and it's still got to make flour. Go ahead, Norm.
Yeah, sorry. So thank you. So Leviticus tells us that Aviv has to make flour, or Carmel has. Sorry, I'm confused.
Aviv, after it's roasted, has to make flour.
Has to make flour.
Yes, because you're offering ground barley topped with olive oil and frankincense. Leviticus, the beginning of Leviticus, what is it? The beginning of Leviticus
14.
tells us what a meat offering is. That it's a ground offering.
That's very interesting. Should I write that down and research it later, or what should I do?
Yeah, if you want to. I mean,
it's very interesting to me what you just said.
Let me see if I can pull it up here. Let's see if I can get.
Randy's sending a chat note, Leviticus 2:1. Okay,
that's it. That's it. Yes, thank you. I won't even bother to open this. Let me get rid of this. Yeah. It's got to make fine flour. That's what the meat offerings were.
But
that's the grain offering. It's a meat offering. It's what the King James calls it. And that's what we're offering with barley.
But then is the omer necessarily offered as a grain offering, or is the omer, because my understanding from Leviticus 2:14 was that when you offer an omer offering of your first fruits to Yahweh, that you should bring either Aviv Kalui, Aviv roasted in the fire, or, and I understand we have a different understanding of what Carmel means, but also Carmel or grain beaten from heads. So, and then we've had discussions, and so when is it roastable or when is it parchable? When is barley parchable? And you said something from soft dough on is parchable.
Yeah, it's got to have, it's got to be out of the worm stage.
Right, I agree. So, and then, but it's roastable. So I guess I appreciate you taking my question. So, but I guess my question is, you said something about how it has to be, you have to be able to turn it into flour. And I'm saying, is it, thank you, Randy, that's very helpful. So if you offer a grain offering of first fruits to Yahweh, you shall offer the grain offering of your first fruits, which I understand to be the omer. It says fresh ears or green ears, Aviv, Kalui, roasted with fire. So to parch it, or crushed new grain, which some people, or which is Carmel. Okay, and I see, and you shall put oil on it and lay frankincense on it. It is
That's
a
right.
grain offering. Very good.
That's right. That's
Very
right.
good.
Yes, that's right. So this is, to me, this is why I believe Carmel has to do with the barley. I know you cannot see that well, but this is the most grape purple barley I have ever seen in my whole life. That is not brown. It's looking brown on Zoom, but I promise you, if we had good lighting, that is just as grape purple as it can be. Okay. And anyway, I have a completely different understanding of the word Carmel, because I know if they wait to Carmel, there's nothing to cut. There's nothing to cut. If you wait till it's a hardtack seed, fully developed, ready to crush rather than to parch, how are you going to stand the omer? How are you going to let it dry in the field to that point? How are you going to transport it to the temple? You can't. Some of this was shattering in my hand today. I hadn't even got to that point. Some of this older stuff, what I did today is some of it was laying over, and I wanted to get just a representative sampling. So I'd reach down by the roots of the plant, and I would bring my hand up to those stalks until I had several heads of barley sitting here, and then I would tear them. And 2 or 3 times, indiscriminately doing that, the barley literally shattered in my hands and the grains dropped to the earth. None of this is caramel. None of this is fully mature. None of this is fully crackable. You can't crush this yet. If we wait to the crushing of the grains, we're not going to have anything to offer. And I respect the people who wrote the books, but I would like to know if the people who wrote the books who tell us what to believe about the caramel barley ever walked in a field or ever touched the wild barley. And that's just my platform. I do respect the people. I learn a lot from them in many instances, but I can't agree 100% because I can't let this barley fall to the earth. And if you're telling me that I'm offering grains that are crushable, then I've had to scoop them up off the soil to offer them. Okay, so yes, I believe that our offering that we harvest once it's dried and toasted has to make flour in order to fulfill that command. So the other thing is this seed has to grow a crop for next year. If we're harvesting it for a first fruits offering, if it's feeding the family, then it also has to make a crop for next year. So we got some questions here. I'm going to stop here. Hang on. Just starting this. Okay. If the seeds are falling as Mr. Cohen tries to harvest, he'll have less to feed his 12 or 16 children. That is right. That is really right. Yeah, and we don't want that to happen. Our fictitious Mr. What did I call him? I forgot. Yossi Cohen. That's what it was. Yossi Cohen. He's going to have less food to feed his children. And so that is the big difference, is they're harvesting at a more mature level of development than I believe that would have to have been harvested at. So the long and the short of what I'm going to make the video on and the report on is that this is the 27th. There's 3 days till the end of January, and there's 14 days until the new moon. And then we've got this year about, if we're looking at next month, we've got another 15 days before wave sheaf. In my honest opinion, there will be barley on the ground in 30 days. We have tomorrow, it's supposed to rain, and I think maybe Friday. I was just going to check the weather and tell you the temperatures last night, next week are breaking my brain. The temperatures are going to be crazy high. And this also has absolutely helped my decision beyond a shadow of a doubt. So yes, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it's going to rain. By Tuesday, it's going to be 76 and 78 degrees. We're going to be in the high 70s. Do you know what's going to happen to this barley with the white stalks already? The ones that the stalks are turning white? The one that the awns are turning white? Do you know what they're going to do?
On the ground.
We're going to have 1, 2, 3 days of high temperatures. They're going to continue to go forward. In my opinion, Brother Norman, we've talked about this a lot, the point of no return. We're at the point of no return. This barley is going to continue going forward. The only thing that can happen now is the rain can keep it moisture for a little while. But it's so far along now that there's no way it would last past the wave sheaf date. There's just no way. When I was out yesterday, I went from this field is as you go down our hill into Yavniel. Yavniel's in a valley, and then behind Yavniel there's a ridge. And there's a way you can go from Yavniel over to Highway 90, just right there at that Peace Valley, that land we got from Jordan when we drew up that peace treaty. It's called Peace Valley, which is well on the way, the beginning of the way to Jerusalem. 90 takes you all the way to Highway 1, and then you go up to Jerusalem. So I drove that stretch of road between Yavniel and Menahania, and it takes you through a forest. It takes you to a forest. It's called the Scenic Road. It's really a little bit better than a pig trail, you know, a muddy road with ruts. It happens to be dry right now, but it's pretty ruddy. To get to the forest, you go through some of the most beautiful farming land I have ever seen. So I drove that yesterday. The elevation is a lot higher than this barley field. I was shocked when I got up there and I saw fields of fields of wild oats. And all of these oats are well into their way to drop. So in this little next bit, I'm getting ready to talk about a wild oat. I actually have one here to help you visualize better. This is a wild oat. When it's first coming out of the boot, this is all closed. These little black awns aren't showing. It's just these two green pieces here, and everything's all green. Just these two green pieces, and everything's all green. You're not going to see these black sticks yet. The first thing it does is you get to see these black awns, and these are actually broken off. They usually stick out a little bit ways past the grain casing, and then you get this like a dandelion puff, because it's getting ready to release these two seeds, and it uses this dandelion puff to carry those two grains away from the plant. So this is your visual of what I'm getting ready to tell you about how advanced the wild oats were in that agricultural area. Would be east of Yavniel, in that beautiful farming area up above the valley, up on that ridge there, halfway up that ridge. There were fields of wild oats, and they were, many of them, all of them had the black awns showing. Many of them had the fuzz showing, and some of them had begun to drop. A wild oat, when it's born out of the head, is completely green. On its way to developing, I really wish I would have thought to bring some of that. On its way to developing, it hangs, it dangles. It dangles like with two little seeds and then long sticks. And the whole head is two pairs of dangling seeds that droop down, and they've got each a long on two seeds. As that barley matures, those awns turn black. And then after they turn black, they get a fuzz because that fuzz opens up that head and they're getting ready to drop their seed. Every bit of that wild oats I saw at the higher elevation were ready to start putting that fuzz on up to the point of dropping oats. So they're up there, they're at the end of their reproduction cycle. Why is that important? Because traditionally that's been one of the things that the Abib of God has looked for, is they want to see oats that have already dropped in a field to know that the barley is their stage of mature, which is a greater stage of maturity than I'm looking for. So even the oats are telling me, remember, oats are ready first, then barley's ready at wave sheaf, and then the wild wheat is ready at Shavuot. So even the oats are telling me we're getting to the time the barley needs to be ready in our area, because the oats are passing, they're almost finished, they're getting ready to drop, and they're dropping. So these are the reasons that I have decided that my household, we will be keeping the first month feasts, the Sabbaths of the first month after we see the new moon. We'll start counting the days towards Unleavened and Pesach, and we will we'll be having the Passover the week of Unleavened next month. Because it's not in 2 months, I promise you, there'll be hardly anything in that field left standing. It's just gone too far. Questions? Go ahead, Norm. I can see the wheels turning.
Yeah, I don't hide it very well. Not that I'm trying, but it's so you're saying that the barley will start to shatter and be on the ground about when?
I can't see past 15 days. If I could tell you the weather, I would give you a better guess. I'm telling you, it's going to take a huge major leap next week. We've got Sunday, the 31st, 65, Monday, the 1st, 74, Tuesday, 68 to 70, I'm sorry, 76 to 78, Wednesday, the same thing, Thursday, 71, and then Friday, it's going to get cold again because we've got more predicted rain.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. If I could tell you past Friday what the weather's going to do, I could give you a better idea of how long it's going to last. But I'm going to tell you it's going to do leaps and bounds next week. I have seen, so this barley that I planted, another reason that I'm okay with the more immature stage of development on the barley than the date tree group and the Abib of God group is because I planted the barley that I brought home from Raim, which was too immature for them. And it grew wheat. I'm sorry, my barley seeds grew wheat. My barley seeds grew barley. Okay. That's why I'm okay with this maturity level, because I can get flour and I can grow a new crop. So you guys are going to have to decide what you're going to do. But Brother Norman, you know, I've been very cautious. I'm pulling the plug on caution. I've seen enough. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So you're saying that I'm just trying to formulate my questions well. So you were inspecting because Asher's sheep were in the, if I understand correctly, because Asher's sheep were in the field, you wanted to get in there and inspect what was going on, and you just pulled it up and pulled it out, and so what you're inspecting, you said that there is dough in the center of the field,
Mhm.
just before medium dough.
Yep.
And you're sure that that will progress in the, yeah, so there will be flour, because you can
Right.
take the just before medium dough and you can roast it and turn that into flour.
Right.
And you also know that medium dough is viable as a seed if you plant it, because you've done that. So you've
Right.
proved that out. Okay. And then what, so you have a full sheaf of
I
that.
don't think I have a sheaf value. A sheaf would be an Omer quantity. No, I'm not going to try to do that. I have a substantial amount here, and I'm going to roast that. Again, I'm deferring to Asher. This is how he takes care of his crops. I mean, his crop takes care of his sheep. The other thing I want to address is I've had people ask me if I'm sure this is wild barley. If this was not wild barley, then Asher would not be allowed to graze his sheep there. The farmer would be having kittens at this point because the destruction is massive. Okay, so this is definitely beyond a shadow of a doubt wild barley. Okay, the reason that, yes, the exact story is as I was going up into the mountains yesterday to look for other areas of barley, I came by that field and saw Asher out there with his sheep. And they were far enough into the field. I just had this, I got to get back over there first thing in the morning and take a look before they eat the heart out of that field. You know, and so I did. I got up and went over there this morning, and his sheep weren't there. They actually probably, I heard him as I was pulling my barley out of the earth. I could hear him across the road coming up. He had grazed them in a different location, but I could hear him calling them. A shepherd has a call when he calls his flocks to go home, and I could hear him calling his sheep and leading them home. So they hadn't grazed the field this morning, but they had grazed the field yesterday. Yes.
Thank you. Sorry. We discussed earlier about if I could, we were on chat. And so we were discussing earlier in the last Zoom meeting, we discussed that the deer, we believe it was the deer, had eaten the barley in the northern end of the field. And then later you posted the information from your other video clips saying that there were no grain heads.
That's right.
In the northern area of the field. So I guess I have two questions. So the first question, because in the last Zoom meeting, we were talking about how the deer only ate grain because they don't, yeah. So
I don't know if the sheep do. I know, I mean, I don't know if the deer do. I know the sheep do. I don't know what the deer eat.
Okay.
I don't. They're wild. You can't get up next to them to see what they're eating.
Right. Okay. So thank you. So then we were on chat and we were discussing, you were saying that I might, because we were discussing that we had gone ahead and declared this last month to be the month of the Aviv based on the sightings of that grain. And then now that is no longer there. And as I was saying that we're going to have to reverse ourselves because that grain doesn't exist, or that grain wasn't there. And you said wait until the presentation that I might not have to.
Wait a minute. You said last month was the first month?
That's what I was trying to explain and get at. My understanding is that in ancient times, the Levites would have to declare when it was going to be the month in which the Passover and the wave sheaf fell by the time of the new moon.
Mm-hmm.
So that would mean that we don't want to predict months and months and months out. We want to follow the cloud, and we want to be receptive to what Elohim is saying. But if the Levites would have to declare at the time of the new moon, if that was the month of the Passover and the wave sheaf, then that's something that we should still at least hypothetically, be able to do today. So that's kind of why all my questions have been pointing towards, will there be a wave sheaf 15 to 21 days after this coming new moon? So
There will be.
but not in a few days. You're saying in the next month.
It's good. Okay, so let's go back to the very beginning. As long as this barley is attached to the root of the plant, it's going to go forward slowly. See, Elohim is just magnificent the way he plans things and allows things to happen. Okay, this barley that I've cut, it's going to be hard in probably 2 days. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and roast it, but it's going to be hard in 2 days. If I left it standing in the field, it's not going to be hard in 2 days. It's not going to be, it's going to be attached to its root.
So I'm trying to catch the significance.
Well, the significance is you have a little play there. You're talking about when the Levite would declare it at the first of the month. Okay, as long as you've got a dough, and as long as the temperature outside is not, let's say, 90 degrees. If you have dough barley and you get a hot snap where it turns to 90 degrees, yes, you're going to have very hard, their version of indivisible grain caramel, or sorry, indivisible grain Abib in 3 days. If you've got 90-degree temperatures and the hot winds are blowing, you've got to have those hot winds. Normally we have what is called a Hamsin or a Sharav wind that kicks in, amazingly enough, for 50 days between unleavened and Shavuot. Imagine that, 50 days. How many days to Shavuot? And it's drying out those grains and bringing them to maturing and causing them to drop and reseed themselves or be harvested. We don't have that right now. That's another thing you've got to factor in, is when those hot winds show up, they've not showed up yet. Okay, so you've got some flexibility. That's why I say every year has to be faced with what we're presented. This year, there's no hot winds to hasten that process. All of those years of 18 years, 20 years, okay, those Sharav winds would come and dry that grain. This year, Elohim has given us grain so early that there's no hot winds. So it's going to be a gentler harvest, a gentler maturing of that grain. And he's sprinkling rains in there to boot.
Okay, okay. So I think I see what you're saying. So when we were on chat and you were saying attend the meeting and then you may not have to re-reverse yourself. Okay, so I think, all right, let me review that. I think
I'll answer your questions later. I'll tell you,
sure.
If you send me a text, I'll probably send you a voice text back because I'm way behind in my work around here because of the barley.
Sure.
So rather than doing a lot of typing, I'll just give you a voice text. Okay.
Sure.
But if you come up with anything further, you have to evaluate each year on an individual basis. There is no equation, no mathematical equation here. Who would ever think that we would have barley in January? I could never imagine that. Who would ever think that if we had barley in January, that the stalks would be turning white and the grains would be full of starch? I could never imagine that. And yet we have it. So each year has to be faced. I face each year like I know nothing. And I never make a mistake because I know nothing.
Thank you. I think we all appreciate your work very much, and we all appreciate that you're trying. You're going to a lot of effort and pains and trouble to post to try to reestablish, what is the correct harvest date, and what is the correct date to declare the Aviv. I think everyone appreciates that very much.
Yeah,
I know I do.
well, yeah, I'm just trying to bring it down to the level of the earth. The earth witnesses God's will, Elohim's will. We're told that heaven and earth, he says, I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, or witness, so it's one of his witnesses. And I just try to bring it down to where a 15-year-old child could go out in the barley field and open a few grain heads and tell where they're at. And I think that's very important, because the people lived with this barley, and it was very much more intuitive to them than it is to us in our generation. We're pretty much disconnected, and they were very, very connected. So yeah, that's all. I just want it to be just simple and basic and easily understood. Scott, did you have a question?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Actually, it's Shauna.
Go ahead.
Wanted to kind of, I think, address part of the clarification for Norman.
Mm-hmm.
As if I recall correctly, December 24th was one of the earlier communications of what you were seeing in that field.
Yeah.
And if I've got my dates correct, the new moon was sighted on the evening of the 14th.
I think that's right. Mm-hmm.
I try to make life a little simpler because I experience most of the day the next day.
Right.
So my day one was Friday the 15th. And that means counting forward, the way you observe Passover, you would have been observing Passover yesterday.
Yeah.
And then the wave sheaf day would be January 31st, right? Do we have enough grain in that field to make an omer to present a wave sheaf offering right now?
No, I don't think we. Well, here's the whole thing. Here's where we're at. Right now, no, there is not enough. The question would be, and I can't answer this, what would the barley have been like that's not there?
That Yossi wasn't here to protect.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So
and then comes the next question. And I hate to even open this can of worms, but I want to open that can of worms. Technically, the only thing we need to do to satisfy a biblical year is to have offered the 7 first fruits offering. And the 7th first fruit offering of olives is completed the first day of Sukkot.
mm-hmm.
And I'm very well aware that there's no place in the Bible that talks about how many months in a year there actually are, or how many months in a year there can be, or any of that stuff. Just like it's same thing with the days of the month. We have some places that we can look at the Bible and see what was. We have some. I think Joe Dumond did the work for. Oh my goodness, I can't even remember what passage it was in the Bible, and he figured out that it actually reflected a 13th month. And we have Noah's days in the ark, where obviously his lunar cycle were 30 days perfectly for that 6 months. So we have some things we know, but we find that Elohim's completely silent about a mandatory number of days in a month or a year.
Mm-hmm. Which is kind of where I came up with the question, because as I was going forward and looking at the calendar, it was like, well, this would blow everyone's mind.
Yeah.
But if things develop in a particular way, which Elohim could easily do.
Yeah, I agree.
then
I
we could
agree.
we could be right in the middle of unleavened right now.
I agree. I agree. I agree that I would be very uncomfortable with that. I have to tell you the truth. I would be very uncomfortable with that.
I think everybody would be uncomfortable
No,
with
no,
it.
no, not from the perspective of it being 11 months, from the perspective of the field.
Ah, okay.
I'm much more comfortable from the perspective of the field that because nothing has dropped in the field, okay? When you're too late, you're looking at things that are dropping.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right now, could I cut anything? Could I cut an omer from what is left? Not what is left, but what is ripe, I should say. No, there's no way. If I took the east side, which is thin, and I put it with this, no, there's no way that what is someone said, and I go by measurements, like I think it's about, is it 2 quarts or 3 quarts? No, there's no way.
2 quarts of flour.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
no way.
Okay.
No.
Which leads to the next question. I don't know whether the New Moon Society has posted all the information about the next new moon, but it looks like we could be in a situation where we have Passover on Shabbat or maybe the day before Shabbat and first fruits like the next day.
I've noticed it, and I was kind of snickering about that, and I was thinking, well, with the barley in this kind of condition, that makes perfect sense to me.
It does. It's like it gives you no room for error.
That's right. That's
What
right.
ifs? Just like
Mhm.
pow, it's right there.
Yep. 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 I agree. I agree. No, I would not, with the condition of the barley in the field, I would not be comfortable making a wave sheaf right now. Not at all. I honestly even think that even if all of that was there in the center of it, because remember this barley, the wild barley especially, the field ebbs and flows. Okay, it doesn't start at one end and run uniformly across the field.
Mm-hmm.
There in the wild fields, there are little rises and falls. Even if the total field is slanted, within that there's a waving motion of rising and falling. And it's in those rises where the barley is going to ripen first, because the water drains away from those rises, those little elevations in the soil. Okay, so we can't say, oh, wow, because this barley is at this point, then that whole Liparin would have been at that point. We simply can't say that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm not comfortable at all saying if Asher's sheep had not eaten that, then we would be ready for that first fruits offering. In fact, if I'm going to point something out, I'm going to point out to you that they left this mature stuff behind. Are you following that train of thought? What
Yep.
they want is like a silage. They want like a softer dough that's moist,
Mm-hmm.
that they can chew. Okay, they're not wanting something that's harder. So in my book, what I see they have left is the more mature stuff. They left that behind.
Interesting. Okay.
And so thank you for helping me talk my way through that. That is exactly why I would not be happy to have said, oh no, we've made a mistake. We have to call that we're in the middle of unleavened. I don't believe that. I believe that what was left was the more mature stuff, and they ate the better grains that had more nutrition.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks, Becca.
You're welcome.
So we're still looking at the 26th as
Yes.
Passover.
Yeah, we're looking at the next new moon, starting the count to the hog. Yes, thank you. It was Ezekiel. That's what it was. I thought it was, but I wasn't really sure. I couldn't remember for sure. I wasn't sure enough to say so. So what I'm going to be doing now next with this barley that I have, I'm going to roast the two samples separately. The greener from the east side, I'm going to roast it and husk it and grind it. And then I'll take the more mature stuff and I will do it separately and do the same thing. And I will make a video on that process. And I may not get the video up of the inspection until the first of the week because it's really busy right now. We've got a lot going on, but I will get that out there. And anyway, my explanation to you was going to be verbal anyway, to let you know why that we're going to be keeping the hogs next month.